Hi, in this video, we dive into the various data types in Python. So let's get started. Like in other programming languages, we store data in different data types. In Python, we have about 8 data types. We have text type that consists of string of characters. We have the numeric type. In this category, we have integer, which consists of whole numbers, floating point numbers like decimals, and complex numbers. There are also sequence types consisting of list, tuple, and range. We will come to each one of them. Then we have mapping type, which is a dictionary. We also have set types consisting of a set and frozen set. There is a Boolean type, which is used to express true and false. Then binary types consisting of bytes, byte array, and memory view. And finally, we have the none type, which can be used to represent a data that is not set yet. So let's start from the beginning and give an example of each of the data types in Python, starting with strings. Over here, we can create a string myText and use double quotation to hold its value. To create a string in Python, you can also use a single quote. So what we have done here is the same as using a single quote, like this. I will comment this line. To print the string myText, we can use a print statement. So over here, we can use a print method followed by parentheses and put the variable name, that is myText. We are showing this example in VS Code. So let's bring the integrated terminal with control and backtick so that we can run it to see what we have done so far. I'm going to run the command python tray datatypes.py and press enter. You can see over here we have the output from our print statement, that is this line, with the value hello world. Let's move on to numeric types in Python, starting with integer. Integers are whole numbers. So over here, we can say my int is equal to 10. Then we print it out. I will run the file again by running the command python tray datatypes.py. You can see it has the previous output of the string. And also, we have our integer value, which is 10. So integers mainly consist of unlimited length of whole numbers. Let's move on to float. A floating point number is basically a decimal number. So we can, for example, say my float is equal to 10.5 and print it out. Next, we have complex numbers consisting of two parts. So here we define the variable myComplex equals 1 plus 2j. So with any complex number, we have two parts. The first part, that is this part, is the real part. And then we have the imaginary part. So to create a complex number type in Python, you can define a variable, then you define the real and the imaginary part. You can also ignore the real part to be something like this. So in this case, we only have the imaginary part. Let's bring the terminal again with control and backtick and run the file. You can see we have all the outputs, the string, integer, the floating point number, and also the complex number. Next, we have the sequence types. For sequence types, we have list, tuple, and range. Let's define a list here and print it out. In Python, you create a list with two square brackets. In some other programming languages like Swift, we use the square brackets to create an array. You can use any supporting data type in Python to define your list. So over here, you can see we have a list of emojis. You can, for example, add a string here, like heart emoji. You can use floating point numbers or integers, depending on the type of list you want to create. So the list we have created here is an ordered list. Each of the list elements can be identified with an index, starting with an index of 0. So the emoji you see here has an index of 0. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when you use the square bracket to create a list, that becomes an ordered list. There is also another type of list, which is called tuple, which is not ordered. We can define the same set of emojis here with a tuple. Using a tuple, you use parentheses instead of the square bracket we use for the list. So to create a tuple in Python, we use parentheses. Then inside the parentheses, you define the tuple elements. Like a normal list, you can use any supporting data type in Python. Another sequence type in Python is range. We use the range method in Python to create a range of values consisting of a start value and an end value. Let's print out what we have done so far. So you can see here our range is starting from 0 to 5, but we wrote only 5 here. You can also make it explicit by adding 0 here. and comma. So this gives you the same output. I will make a dedicated video for ranges in Python, but for now, let's leave it here and move on to the mapping type in Python. The mapping type in Python is a dictionary. A dictionary in Python is used to store data in key value pairs. You can see from this example, we have two keys, name and age, and the values are John and 30, and the integer value of 30. So a dictionary in Python is nothing more than a collection consisting of ordered and changeable key value pairs. We have the key and value. Similar to the list we defined here, you can use a set to define multiple elements for a single variable. To define a set, we use the curly braces, just like the dictionary. But with the set, we don't have key value pairs. We only have the set elements, like how you define a list elements. The difference between a set and a list is that a list is ordered, whilst a set is not ordered. So once you define your set of elements with the curly braces, we create an unordered list of elements. Whenever we create a set like this, the elements are changeable, so we can replace any of these elements of the set. We can also freeze a collection with frozen set. For example, over here we created a list. So let's copy this list and paste it here to illustrate the frozen example. Once you define a list, we can convert it to a frozen list. So here we can say frozen list equals frozen set. Then we bring the emoji list. So this will convert the list we defined here to a frozen list. So once we do that, we cannot change the list elements anymore. When a list becomes frozen, it behaves like a set. It becomes unchangeable. Let's move on to the next, that is the Boolean type. In Python, like in other programming languages, Booleans represent two values. We have true and false. So a true value represents 1 and a false value represents 0. I will make another video on the Boolean type in Python. But for now, let's move on to binary types. Under the binary types, we have bytes, which can hold numbers between 0 and 255. For example, we can create a byte variable consisting of this list. So none of the list values you specify here should be more than 255. Otherwise, you will get an error. So in this example, we create a standard list. Then we use the bytes method to convert it to bytes. One thing you should keep in mind when you create a byte is that once you define a byte, you cannot modify it anymore. You can see over here, we are using a for loop to iterate through the byte, and we are printing it here. Let's add a string here and call it my byte so that you see the output well. I will then bring the terminal and print everything we have done out. So you can see here we have my byte 0, my byte 145. That is the byte elements. So we are printing everything out. As I said before, once you define a byte, you cannot modify it anymore. For example, if we try to modify the first element, that is this element, which is 0. If we try to change it to, for example, 255, we will get an error. You can see we have a type error here. Bytes object does not support item assignment. So let's add a comment here so that goes away. So as you just saw, the byte sequence of numbers we define here is immutable. That means you cannot modify a byte once you define it. To make a byte mutable, we have to use a byte array. So here we have the same example as the previous one. We have a standard list, then we convert it to a byte array. Once we do that, we can pick any of the list elements and modify it. For example, here we are changing the first element, that is 0, to 255. Previously, we did the same thing on this line and we got an error because the byte sequence is immutable. We cannot change the values. But once you convert the list to byte array, we can now modify the list elements. So let's add my byte array here and print it out. You can see here the first element in the byte array is 0. But at this line, we change it to 255, and in the output, you can see we have 255, and the other elements remain the same. In Python, you can use the memory view data type to return memory view of an object. So what does that mean? This allows the Python code you write to access the internal data of any object you define without making a copy of it. To create a memory view, we can define a variable and use the memory view method. So here we are accessing the first character and printing it out. We can also do the same thing for the second character and print it out as well. Let's bring the terminal and run the file. You can see on this line the Unicode value of the letter H is 72 and that of the letter E is 101. The last data type in Python is the non type. You can use the non type to specify a value that is not set yet. So mainly you will use it for an absence of a value, or in other words, if you want to define a null value. Let's look at an example. We can create a variable myNone is equal to none, then we print it out. So once you declare a variable as none, it doesn't mean the value is 0, false, or an empty string. None is a data type of its own. So in this case, it means myNone is not set yet. So these are all the different data types you will encounter in Python. Later, I will make a dedicated video for each of the data types we discussed in this video. Thanks for watching.